The Morrigan, the Morrígan, the Morrigan. Of all the videos I could have chosen to use my real voice, this one is probably the worst. Celtic names can be particularly difficult to say, and even if you ask two different Irish people, thanks Chris and Philip from work, both of them will give you a different answer, because apparently making some letters silent is optional.
You look like a bachelor.
So without further ado, welcome to the mysteries of mythology, the Morrigan. A warrior rides towards battle, his face hardened with resolve, but inside his heart is pounding with fear. The path he follows is well trodden, but today something feels different. Something feels off. As he nears a small brook, he sees a woman leaning over, washing clothes in the water. He doesn't recognize her, but there's something unnerving about her presence. The clothes she's washing, soaked in blood, look eerily like his own. His breath catches in his throat, and he tries to convince himself it's just a coincidence. Then she turns and locks eyes with him. In that instant, a cold rush of terror grips him, like an icy wind freezing his very soul. He blinks and she's gone, vanished. But deep down he knows what he saw, and worse, he knows what it means. His time has come. The Morrigan is one of the most feared and complicated figures in Irish mythology. She is usually shown as a goddess of war, fate, and death. Unlike other gods, she doesn't offer comfort or protection. Instead, she shows up on the battlefield or in dreams, bringing dark warnings of death and destruction. The name Morrigan appears in both Old Irish and Middle Irish, where it's Morrigan, and there's been a lot of debate about the origins of her name, mainly over the first part, Mor. In Old Irish, Mor can mean phantom. According to linguist Whitley Stokes, this word is related to the Anglo-Saxon word mare, which we still use today with the word nightmare. In the Middle Irish period, the word was frequently spelt mur, with the accent over the O, which means great. The second part of her name, Rigan, means queen, which comes from the Latin regina. So her name could either mean phantom queen or great queen, but most sources prefer great queen. Her presence in the myths always seems to carry a sense of dread, especially for warriors. If she crosses your path, it's rarely a good sign. In ancient Irish stories, she often foretells the death of warriors by appearing in different forms, sometimes as a beautiful woman, other times as an ominous creature like a raven or crow. She also appears in visions as an old washerwoman, cleaning the bloody clothes of those about to die. She changes her form to manipulate the emotions of those who encounter her. Before a battle, she may appear as a beautiful and enticing figure, provoking warriors' bloodlust and driving them to fight with reckless abandon. At other times, she shifts into a hideous form, invoking terror and despair into those who are fated to die. It's through her shape-shifting that she can exert control over the battlefield. Whatever her form, it signals the same grim fate, that death is near. But the Morrigan isn't just the bringer of death, she controls it. In many ways she represents the forces of fate, especially for those who enter battle. She doesn't simply watch the outcome, she influences it. In many ways, she represents the forces of fate, especially for those who enter battle. She doesn't simply watch the outcome, she influences it, whether through prophecies, indirect influence, or direct actions. The Morrigan plays a key role in deciding who lives and who dies. One of the most notable traits of the Morrigan is her ability to exist as both one goddess and as three goddesses acting together. And this part gets a little confusing, as not only does it depend on where in Ireland you get your story from, but also because most of what we know about these myths were written by Catholic monks, adding their own flavour to the story. It's thought that originally the Morrigan was 3 separate goddesses, a title rather than a specific figure, and that later, when the stories were written, they became a tripartite goddess. As the 3 daughters of Ernmas, the mother goddess, they went by the collective name Morrígan. The 3 names of the Morrígan were most commonly Baive, Macha, and Nevin, though in some versions Nevin is thought to be Danu or Anand. Baive is always portrayed as a crow or raven, which is likely where the Morrigan gets her association with death, as the crow is almost always seen before and after battle. Some suggest that after each battle, the dead were given an hour before they were collected, so that the Morrigan could collect their souls and transport them to the afterlife. Next we have Macha. Macha was a representation of fertility, and in her human form she was described as a beautiful woman, but in her natural form she was considered to be the land itself. That being said, she was also associated with warfare, especially preserving the nation's sovereignty. And finally, we have the 3rd sister, Morrigan, or depending on the source, was either called Nevin, Anand, or Danu. It was this sister who was associated with the frenzied havoc of war, and played a part in the battle between the Tuatha de Danann and the Fomorians, which we'll come to later. The difference in the name likely comes from the regional variations in local legends. However, despite these differences, the Morrigan's role as a powerful figure of war and fate remains the same, always influencing the chaos of battle. In the Leibhog Gabála Érenn, more commonly known as the Book of Invasions, the Morrigan is mentioned as one of the Tuatha de Danann, a tribe of magical people in Irish mythology. When the Tuatha De arrived in Ireland, they faced opposition from groups that had settled there earlier, including 2 supernatural races, the Firbolg and the Fomorians. The Tuatha De quickly found themselves in conflict with the Firbolg, leading to 2 intense battles. There were 2 battles of Moitura, or Cath Moitura. In the first battle, the Morrigan and her sisters used their magic to aid in the fight. They cast spells that wreaked havoc on the battlefield. It was then that Baive and Macha and Morrigan sent forth magical showers of sorcery and compact clouds of mist and a furious rain of fire, with a downpour of red blood from the air on the warriors' heads. After the first battle, the Tuatha de Danann were victorious and managed to secure their place in Ireland. But peace didn't last for long, as the Fomorians proved to be much more formidable an enemy in the second Battle of Moitura. As the Tuatha De prepared for this second battle, the Dagda, one of their leaders, sought out his wife, our good friend the Morrigan, for a prophecy. He found her at the river's ford, and there they engaged in intercourse. After they finished, instead of having a cigarette, the Morrigan prophesied that Tuatha De Danann would indeed win the battle, but their victory would come at a cost of great bloodshed. On the day of the battle, the Tuatha De assembled, ready to fight with the Fomorians. When the Morrigan was asked what she would do to help win the battle, she simply replied, "What I shall follow, I shall hunt." As predicted, the battle soon turned into a brutal bloodbath. The Morrigan played a key role by rousing the Tuatha De Danann with her fierce cries and driving the Fomorians into a panicked retreat that ended with them perishing in the sea. The Morrigan also plays a major role in the Ulster Cycles of tales, where she both helps and causes problems for the hero of the story, Cú Chulainn. In Torn Bo Regovna, or the Cattle Raid of Regamain, Cú Chulainn encounters a mysterious woman dressed in red, blocking his path and driving away one of his prized cows. She's riding a red carriage pulled by a single-legged horse. This horse is skewered from rear to head by a pole from the carriage. Recognizing her as a threat to his property and status, he confronts her angrily. Cú Chulainn realizes he's up against no ordinary thief. This is Morrigan. The Morrigan's act of taking his cow isn't about material gain. In Irish mythology, cattle symbolize power, status, and sovereignty. By seizing Cú Chulainn's prized cow, she is symbolically challenging his strength, foreshadowing the test he will face in battle and his eventual demise. Cú Chulainn's ownership of the cow also represents his stature and heroism within Ulster, making the Morrigan's interference a direct threat to his identity as a warrior. Understanding now who she is, he admits that he would have acted differently had he have known who she was. In response to his misbehaviour, the Morrigan gives a dark prophecy about her presence at his future death in the torn Balcúnia. Then he saw that she had become a black bird upon a branch near him. "A dangerous woman thou art," said Cú Chulainn. "It is at the guarding of thy death that I am, and I shall be," she said. Later in the torn Balcúnia, the Morrigan appears again as a raven, warning the brown bull of Cooley to flee before the evil queen, Medivh of Connaught, can capture it. When Medivh launches her invasion of Ulster, a curse weakens all the men with a plague, which is called the debility of 9 days, although it lasts several months. Cú Chulainn alone is unaffected and is tasked with defending Ulster's borders by himself. In between battles, a young maiden approaches Cú Chulainn, offering herself to him as a lover. He turns her down, but not long after, he is attacked by a series of animals. First, an eel coiling around him in a river, then a wolf snapping at him, and finally, a charging cow. Each time, Cú Chulainn fought them off, injuring each creature as it attacked. After his victories against the animals, Cú Chulainn encountered a woman milking a cow. She was blind in one eye, with a broken leg and cracked ribs, wounds that matched the injuries that he had inflicted on the animals. The old woman gave Cú Chulainn 3 drinks from her cow, and he blessed her after each one. With each blessing, one of her injuries healed. Once she finally healed, the woman revealed her true identity as the Morrigan. She reminded him of the past insults and warned him again of his approaching death before disappearing. During a later battle with Queen Medivh's warriors, the Morrigan's prophecy came to pass. Cú Chulainn was mortally wounded. Refusing to die lying down, he used his exposed entrails to tie himself to a standing stone, hoping to fool his enemies into thinking he was still alive. His plan worked, keeping the opposing forces at bay. It wasn't until a raven, the Morrigan herself, landed on his shoulder that they realized the truth. After the second battle of Moytura, the Morrigan made a rare and surprising prophecy. For the first time, she spoke of peace. Peace to the heavens, heaven to earth, earth under sky, strength in every cup. Her words seemed to foretell a harmonious future, but this moment of calm was brief. Immediately after, she turned to a darker vision, predicting the doom of the world, a cosmic event similar to the Norse Ragnarok. This foretelling reminded all that even in moments of peace, the Morrigan's ultimate domain was death and destruction, and no peace could last forever under her watch. While the Morrigan is unique to Irish mythology, scholars have identified similar figures in Celtic lore. One such a figure is Morgan le Fay, the famous antagonist in Arthurian legend. Like the Morrigan, Morgan le Fay was known for her ability to shapeshift and predict the future. Both figures appeared in multiple forms. However, despite some similarities, scholars debate whether their names share a common origin. Although some believe they come from the same etymological root, Morgan and Morrigan have entirely different meanings in Welsh and Irish, making the connection a bit of a stretch. The Morrigan also resembles sovereignty goddesses in Irish mythology. These goddesses represent the spirit of the land itself and often symbolise the right to rule over it. In ancient Irish belief, a king's power was tied to his connection with the land, and these goddesses embodied that bond. Their fertility and well-being reflected the prosperity of the land under a just ruler. The Morrigan is similarly tied to the landscape, with various locations in Ireland bearing her name, as described in Dinshenkas of Irish myth, a collection of stories explaining how places in Ireland got their names. Some have suggested that the Morrigan may be connected to the Beansheed, or Banshee of Irish folklore. The Morrigan's terrifying scream and her role in foretelling death may have inspired the idea of the Banshee, or both figures might have come from a shared oral tradition. Outside of Celtic mythology, there are notable parallels between the Morrigan and the Valkyries from Old Norse legends. Both appear either alone or in groups, possess the power to prophesy, and are often associated with birds. According to Celtic scholar Patrick K. Ford, mythological women like the Valkyries and the Morrigan embody the full circle of life. They have the power to give life by bearing children, and the power to take it away by deciding who will die in battle. Some scholars argue that war and death might not be the Morrigan's main role. Instead, they believe her true focus is the land, its people, its sovereignty, and even the well-being of Ireland's animals. But in a time when war was deeply a part of daily life, sovereignty was often decided on the battlefield. The Morrigan's presence in these stories might reflect that reality. So what do you think? Is the Morrigan a force of good, evil, or something else entirely? And if you've enjoyed hearing my real voice for the first time, please let me know in the comments.